Sugar, with everything happening today, you might find yourself full of fear, completely stressed out, and totally overwhelmed. So, today I'm sharing some tips that will help you relieve the stress and find your life balance. Hey, Sugar. Now, I don't think I shared this with you, but I am the resident life coach on a Black Star Network's A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. And each week on that show, we chat about a variety of topics. And recently, I shared with viewers some tips on stress relief, how to achieve your goals in the midst of chaos, protecting your peace, how to set boundaries, and how to find your life balance in the process. And of course, I wanted to bring that here and share that with my sugars. Take a look.
So, Dr. Tierney, let's jump into it for a moment. I know you're the author of, the Goal Setting Journal. You talked to us in the past about what it means to level up. But there are going to be times in each person's life, as we've heard, that they have to determine what they need to do. Can you talk to us about accountability and taking ownership of your stuff? Almost said something else, but we're not going to go there today. So can you talk to us about that for a moment? Because it is important that everybody learns what it means to take ownership when we're getting ready to take bold moves.
Yeah. I think a lot of times this can be difficult because when we have not set boundaries, then we don't know truly what lane we are supposed to be in. So as Charlotte was speaking and Katrina was speaking, well, I do not have children. And so as an educator, history and higher education, I knew that was not something that I could necessarily speak on from the standpoint of as a parent, or I'm a TT, I can help do homework, but that vantage point is different from someone who is an actual parent. So I don't go into that lane because that is not my lane, and so I think using that same principle is important when we're planning out steps or thinking about what needs to happen. We have to first identify what our lane is, and so having boundaries is very critical for that. Now, you guys may have heard me, before give you my definition of boundaries. Oftentimes when we think about boundaries, we think about barriers, what they not going to come over here and don't do this and sugar, that's a barrier. Anytime if we're thinking about a boundary in relation to what someone else is not going to do, that's a barrier. You're putting up a Heisman stiff arm saying, you're not coming over here. Your focus is on them. Your boundaries are about you. It's about what you need for you to be healthy, happy, and whole so that you can reach your goals and continue on the path that has been outlined for you so that you can identify your lane. Okay. So it's the line that you draw in the line in the sand for yourself. Okay. And you have to be the one holding yourself accountable to that boundary, and so when we don't have boundaries, when we haven't outlined the lanes that we're supposed to be in, when we haven't identified what's best for us to keep us healthy, happy, and whole, when we do not have a clear vision of our goals, we haven't sat down to really get some clarity around that thing, then sugar, we out here doing all the things all the time for everybody, and so we're running ourselves low. And again, this isn't necessarily that we're doing bad things or that we're focusing on the wrong things, but the timing of that thing matters. If you're supposed to do that thing right now, all of that matters when we're talking about actually having a plan for how we are to move, forward. So the first thing I would say is, sugar, identify your lane and where you are supposed to be versus where you are not supposed to be.
Thank you for sharing that, because oftentimes veering happens. And so let's talk for a moment about causes of veering, causes of veering, because yes, sometimes it's you and sometimes it's not. And so what does that look like in an individual's life?
Well, that can be a very broad one, we can start veering over into someone else's lane because of our insecurities, meaning if I don't do all the things, if I'm not everything to everyone, then I won't necessarily feel good about myself. I won't feel needed. I won't feel like I'm confident or capable. The way that I get that is because of what I'm doing, how much I'm doing. Them needing me gives me a sense of something that I need for my identity. So when we are insecure in who we are and insecure in our own selves and who we in truly our identity, then that will start us to veer over into lanes that we necessarily shouldn't be in, and taking on more than what we should be taking on. Other times we may veer because of unresolved, emotions. Recently on, my YouTube channel, Hey Sugar with Dr. Tierini, I talked about our emotions and what happens when those emotions that we have just decided that we don't want to face, we don't want to address, or we've been walking around with some unhealed, undiagnosed diseases, mental and emotional diseases that will cause us to veer, unintentionally. We don't necessarily know that emotion is what's driving the bus. We're doing things out of that emotion, and that can cause us to veer over into other people's lanes. Tradition can have us veering over into other people's lanes. We do it because we've always did it, because that's how my mama did it. That's how Big Mama did it. That's how my daddy did it. But sugar, that don't mean that it's the right thing for you to do now, in this season, at this space, at this age, at this, place in your life. So we could be veering over into other lanes simply because we're doing things just out of tradition. So it's any number of things that could cause us to veer out of our lane, to get distracted, to get into these spaces that become the stumbling blocks of us actually moving forward, but I would say that of the ones that are coming to me right now, those are probably the top three that I see us committing the most.
So today I just want to kind of jump right in. Dr. Tierney, I'm coming to you because you hit the people in the mouth last week with this whole notion of what it looks like to have boundaries and barriers, and what is the difference between those things. And can you talk to us a little bit about why we need them, Dr. Tierney?
Absolutely. So what I teach my clients is that there is a difference between boundaries and barriers. And a lot of times we'll say that we are setting boundaries, but what we're actually doing is erecting barriers. Now, what I say is that it's a boundary when it focuses on you. When you are focusing on what you need, what you're going after, your goals, that's a boundary. A barrier is when we focus on them. Think like the Heisman stiff arm. And actually, if you've ever looked at the Heisman Trophy, you'll notice that the gentleman's arm is out and his head is turned towards what he's trying to block. He's not facing forward of where he's going, what he's trying to accomplish, the touchdown he's trying to make. He's focusing on that person. And it's for that reason why I tell my clients that we should have boundaries instead of barriers, because barriers will take our focus off of what we need to be doing and put it on trying to control them. And when you have your boundaries, your effective boundaries, sugar, you won't even see them. It won't even matter what they're doing. I don't have to go out of my way to erect a barrier for them, because they could be doing whatever they're doing and I don't even see it. It does not impact me. It does not stop me from going after what I want to. And this is literally, I'm talking emotionally, I'm talking physically. You can have a boundary that says, certain people, energies, whatever, cannot come into your home. So when we are focused in on our boundaries, we make sure that we're paying attention to us and not to them and the thing that we're trying to keep out. Instead, we're focusing on where we're going.
Dr. Tierney, let's talk about that for a moment, because we've talked about going rogue. We've talked about winging it. We've talked about flying by the seat of our pants, which some of us may be hanging on by a thread. But at the end of the day, what does it really look like for us, not only to take ownership of those things that we need to do, but how do we help others around us discover how to take ownership of the things they're responsible for?
Yeah. Well, the first thing, and this is why I teach my clients boundaries instead of barriers, because we don't have a plan. We're flying by the seat of our pants. And like Katrina said, hopefully they're not on fire, but sometimes they are, and we're doing all the things and really getting in our own way, often because we are not taking that moment to focus in on ourselves. We can't help anybody else until we first helped ourselves. We can't be overly aware of them and we're not self-aware of what's going on with us. The best thing that we can bring to any interaction, any relationship, partnership, business partnership, is self-awareness, and so I think a lot of times we are overly focused on them and what they're doing or what they're not doing instead of first focusing on us. What's that scripture? We're trying to take the log, the speck out of our brother's eye before we check the log that's in our own eye. I think before we start looking at helping someone else, we have to first make sure that we are focused on what it is that we need. What is it that we probably need to start working on? What is it, that thing that we're feeling? And when we get into kind of that barrier language, what we're doing is, oh, they did, okay, block. Okay, we're just reacting to everything out here. And when we continue to react to everything out here, it makes us hyper aware of what's going on out here, what they're doing, where they need help. Oh, this sermon really would impact them. Oh, so-and-so need to hear this. But we're not taking that second to stop and say, okay, what's happening within me? Oh, why did that hurt my feelings? Or what is it that I need to be working on? Girl, why are you procrastinating on that? Or maybe I should. We're not doing that work, and so that's really when we're talking about helping other people. Sugar, first help yourself. First sit you down and have a conversation with you and bring you in front of your coach or you in front of your therapist to say, hey, help me get me together. And then maybe I wouldn't even have to necessarily say anything or do anything to help them. Maybe me just modeling the best me that I can be will then help them to say, oh, well, maybe I should start. Or I see how she moving and no conversation even needs to be had. You just being you will help them. You being the best you will help them be the best them.
Wow, I think that's a great segue. And with that in mind, ladies, let's dive for a second into how do we guide people toward wanting to do internal work. It's not pretty or pleasant, but to move life forward, it must be done. Give a few tips on what that looks like.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm gonna tell you, that's a tough one. And I say that because it's like that old adage, you can't you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. It's that internal work, that self-awareness work, that being self-aware. That's something you have to want for yourself. It doesn't matter how many times I may tell you that this is an issue or point it out to you, or if you don't want to know you better, if you don't think that there's something about you that could be improved, then sugar, we talking to a brick wall, here. And so it's a fine line between helping someone to do that work and then realizing that the only thing you can do is just make it available to them. Someone asked me once before and was like, well, why don't you tell people that they should coach with you? They should coach. No, I make it available to them. I let them know what the resources are. I let them know, hey, I'm here for you, but I can't make anyone come and do it, because then when you do that, yeah, they'll go to the coaching session, or they may go to the marriage counseling, or they may, do the thing, but they're just kind of like, I'm just checking the box. It won't really get on the inside. So that's a fine line when we're talking about kind of getting people to do that type of work. It has to be something that they themselves value and want for themselves in order for it to really take hold and for them to really get the real benefit of that type of work in their lives.
Absolutely. So how do we level up who we are so that we bring our best self to every space that we're in? Dr. Tierini.
I'm going to give you the answer that I pretty much give for any question along this line. Get a coach. Get a coach, and I say that, jokingly, but in all due seriousness, because a lot of times we're trying to modify something that we can't see. Okay, so sugar, right now, if you were to look at yourself, right, you can see your hands, your arms, you can see your chest, your abdomen, but you can't see your neck. I don't care how much you crane your eye, you cannot see your neck, and so that's the value of having a coach, having someone that can look at you and say, okay, I see a little something. When you said this, it kind of connects to it. Sounds like, are you struggling with, okay, wait a minute, it might be your vision might be a little blurry because I'm hearing a little, or I'm seeing a little, here's a pattern here. When we have a coach, someone that is dedicated to helping us, someone that is not our friend, not our family, so they can take an objective view, then they are able to truly help you clarify your goals. They are able to help you see the patterns and the habits that are getting in the way of you actually achieving your goals. And they can hold you accountable to what you said you wanted to do. And so trying to do this by ourselves, trying to do this in a silo, we're already setting ourselves up for failure just in that. We were not created to do life alone. You can see that all throughout the Bible. We are meant to be in community with someone else. So if we're talking about wanting to level up, first defining what that even means for you, because their level up might not be your level up, and that level that they on might crush you, Sugar. So you got to define, what does level up mean for you? What are your goals? And actually working towards that in a way that will help you not just achieve it, but be able to maintain it and sustain it. And so trying to do that by yourself, Sugar, you invite somebody into that place. Get you a coach. And it doesn't have to be me. I would love to be your coach. I would love to schedule a free session with you. I would love for us to talk, and so that you can actually achieve what it is that you really want this year for real this time. But even if it's not me, even if I'm not your person, find your person. The coach has a coach. I have a coach. I have a business coach and a personal coach. I have somebody that tells me about me, that looks me eyeball to eyeball and say, ma'am, now you telling the Sugars this, ma'am, and hold me accountable, and so there's no shame in it. There is absolutely no shame in it. But that is the secret weapon to all these successful people that you see. That's their secret weapon. They have a coach. Athletes, a coach. Professional speakers, a coach. There's somebody that they have in their corner that is helping them to get out of their own way so that they can actually achieve their goals. So if we're talking about what do you need to do, number one tip, get a coach. That's what you need to do right now. Sugar, get a coach. Make that your 2025 goal. I'm going to get a coach, period. And stop.
I like that. Getting a coach is important. But there are going to be some people that say, Dr. Tierini, I hear you. I love your passion. Everything you said made great sense. But I am paralyzed by fear to be transparent. I am paralyzed by fear to be transparent. How can people determine their personal access point to saying, you know what, today I just might bite the bullet and move on and go forward and get somebody to help me. But there is something that's paralyzing them on the inside that they just can't get over.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to answer this in two ways. Okay. First, let me go straight spiritual, straight to the Bible. This is why the Bible tells us that God did not give us the spirit of fear. Okay. So what that means is that you will feel fear, but that spirit of fear, that is something that is sent to stop you. That is an attack. That there's something that okay, I need to get a coach. I want to accomplish this. So the enemy knows, okay, if I can stop her from doing this, if I can stop him from taking that step, then I can keep him, I can keep her, I can keep them from actually manifesting and stepping in their purpose, that thing that God has for them. So let me keep hitting them with this fear. Let me keep their mind racing. Let me keep their heart pounding. Let me keep them from going in that direction. Because if I can stop them from actually taking that step, then I can stop everything that's supposed to happen in their life. I can stop the generational blessing that's supposed to be released in their life. That is the number one tactic that the enemy uses to get us in our own way. So that's the first thing I want you to understand about that fear that you're feeling. The second thing I want you to understand is that there are times when we just got to do it scared, Sugar. I did a whole episode on this whole faith over fear concept. And so we're not, it's when we say that, it's not saying that, oh, if I have faith, then I won't feel fear. Yes, you will. You absolutely will feel that fear. But having that oomph to know that I have to do it, even though I'm afraid, even if I have to crawl, even if I have to take a baby step, even if I have to go look at that lady website 4, 5, 6, 7, 12, 11 times to make sure that she the one, or that I feel comfortable, or whatever that is, we have to sometimes take that baby step anyway in the face of that fear. This is why I always say, maybe I'm not your coach. Maybe you don't feel comfortable with me. Maybe there's another coach that when you see them, something resonates on the inside that you like, okay, maybe I can lean in to that person. And let me tell you, Sugar, when you're talking to a coach or even a therapist, there will be something in you that will let you know if that is your person or is that's not your person. Okay. And I can tell you this when I'm connecting with someone, I am also listening to see if God sent you to me or if I need to connect you with somebody else that I feel like you might be, better suited, to talk with. So understand that even if you take the baby step and that's not that thing, trust that thing on the inside of you that's saying, okay, this is my person, or this isn't my person, or this is the direction. And if you're not quite sure, and if you're not quite, this is again where then you go into your community. Hey, let me talk to my pastor. Hey, let me talk to, my best friend, because I'm thinking this might be it, but let me just bounce that thing off of someone else, but understand, just because you feel that fear, that doesn't mean you get to stop. The number of things that we do scared, that's really that fear, that's the door to your next level. That apprehension, that is really where you need to lean into. I don't do anything. If there's a new opportunity, the first time I recorded on here, Sugar, I cried. That first morning, I was terrified, like, oh my God, I'm going on TV. But I knew I had to do it because I felt the fear. Remembering, again, that's the number one tool that the enemy tries to use to stop you. So I want you to look at that fear from those two angles, and then you make that choice. Am I going to let this fear hold me back and get stuck right here where I'm at? Or am I going to lean in, take the baby steps, make sure I'm prayed up and understand what's happening in the spirit, and then move forward with that confidence, knowing that God got me. He's going to send me to the right place.
In the time that we have left, let's consider in being bold and balancing and trying to discover how to move on to next. Each one of you give what someone's next step should be from your perspective.
So everybody done went with these P's. So we're gonna pray. We're gonna prepare the pieces and parts of our plan. And so I'm gonna make mine fit into this P because I've already kind of given you mine. So what I'm gonna say is, please go get a coach. Please go get a coach. Pray, prepare, and put the pieces and parts of your plan, and then take that plan and please go get a coach, because then the coach can help you plan, do what you need to do, and then get you a Christian coach, because then y'all can pray together and you would hit them goals. There we go.
I agree with everything y'all have said. I know that you have a word for the people, whether it's on faith and family, discovering how to work your perspective, how to get through the things that people have to go through. Talk to us about what that looks like in everyday terms, because some people are like, oh, y'all talking over my head. Sometimes, y'all go too fast. I'm like, you know what? Give them some wisdom keys, Dr. T.
Well, if we're just talking about protecting your peace and considering all the things that have happened just from the first week of January to now, one of the things that has helped me to stay in peace is to be intentional about my focus. What we focus on becomes the driver of the bus, so to speak. And so if we choose to focus on all the things that are going, wrong, so to speak, or all of the problems, or all of the drama, all of the, all the things, then we are inviting anxiety. We are inviting, the turmoil. We are inviting that pounding of in our chest at 2 a.m. because we're so uncertain. We're inviting some of that in. Now, some of that absolutely is just going to be the nature of the beast, right? Because no one wanted to go into work one day and all of a sudden hear that now there's been legislation where, you've been laid off, and so there are things that we cannot control, but we can control where we put our focus. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier about our perspective. Where are you putting your focus? If you choose to focus in on the problems, then that is all that you would see, as opposed to focusing in on the opportunities. What are the opportunities during this time? And let's be clear, even though I have my own business and, I'm not worried about somebody coming in with the, pink slip and telling me I'm no longer employed, there are still things that I have to pay attention to. When the economy, does what the economy does, every business owner, every small business owner will tell you, we feel it before CNN ever announces it. Okay. And so in those spaces, we have to choose to look for the opportunity. We have to choose to say, okay, well, what is it that I can be doing in this season, in this space, in this, this is the place where new things are invented and created. And, but if it won't happen if you're only choosing to focus in on the problem, focus in on what's going wrong. The other reason why we have to be very, very intentional about our focus is because this is also when distractions like to come in. If you've been saying that you want to go back to school and you've been saying that for the last 10 years, and now all of this is happening, then you become distracted where this might be the best time for you to go back to get that degree. But when your focus is off, then distractions can easily come in and throw you off your game. And so making sure that we're being intentional in our focus and we're focusing on what really matters. That's the third piece here. Ask yourself, is this going to matter in 5 years? Is this going to disrupt everything? So in 5 years from now, this is going to be the thing that keeps me up at night. Most of the time, our answer will be no. Our feelings, our emotions would like to tell us that it is. But most of the time, no. If you think back 5 years from where you are to today and 5 years ago, you can't remember what you were stressed about. You can't remember what was, that thing that was just going bump in the night for you 5 years ago. And so making sure that we're keeping our focus on the things that really matter, what's really important. And most of the time, it's not the things that we're putting our focus on, and so being intentional in what we focus on, being intentional to focus on the things that are lasting, being intentional to focus on the things that God told you to do. Not what's happening all out here, but focusing in on what God told you to do and start building that. Start going to do that thing, not worrying about them, that, and this over here, but focusing in on what really matters. That is what helps you to protect your peace. Because honestly, when you're focused in on what you're supposed to be doing, when you're focused in on what God told you to do, then even if it's a question of provision, Lord, how am I going to do it? I can't pay for this. I just lost my job. Provision always follows purpose. If it's God's will, it's his bill. He will pay for it. And that's something that I can absolutely say. When I stepped out to do the things that God told me to do and not worry about none of the other stuff, provision always followed. Okay. So even if it's a provision issue, if it's a supply issue, don't focus on where it's going to come from. Focus on what you were told to do and know that there will always be a ram in the bush. Provision will always be right there for you, and so that's the main thing that I would say right now. Just a quick 1, 2 easy you can start today is shifting your focus. What are you focusing on? Is it bringing you more peace or is it bringing you, more pressure and pain? Okay. If it's causing you to stay up at night because you're worried about it, and how shift your focus, sugar.
I think that those are good tips, Dr. Tierney, because some of them are on a 90-day hold. It's like you can't move this direction with your work. You can't do that. You don't know if you're going to stay employed or you're not. And so the things that you've said about being intentional with your focus, allowing yourself to, ease into something that's new. And how then do you consider telling people to design what's next for them? What does that look like? Like some people may have gotten a peak slip. Some people are just in a holding pattern collecting a check.
Yeah.
But what do they do now for their next in the event they never go back to the office?
Yeah. Yeah. Come and talk to me.
Hey,
Um, and I mean that I'm kind of saying it jokingly, but I mean that in all seriousness. Because like I just said, even in this environment, us that are business owners, we're getting, directions. Okay, well, Laura, how are we going to navigate this? And one of the things that God told me, in all honesty, transparency, is to give away a free strategy session. So if you've been, you're in a furlough or you're in a 90-day hold or you've lost your job and you're not sure what to do next, come and talk to me. Schedule a free 30-minute strategy session where we can begin to build a strategy for your next. Because right now I can get it and understand it because that was me. when I lost my job and I had no idea what I was going to do, and the house that Tierney built had completely crumbled, I had to go back to the drawing board. And that can be a hard thing when you feel like the rug has been pulled from up under you. But you have to get a strategy. And you sometimes need to invite somebody in to point out where you should be placing your focus. And so that's why from my place of servant leadership, I'm giving that, to you to say, hey, someone helped me to do it for me. So let me give you 30 minutes where we can help do it with you and for you. What that next thing is. There may be a passion on the inside of you that you just put on the shelf and you didn't think anything else about it because you wanted to make sure you had the sure thing and know that your bills were paid. And so you stuck with the W-2 instead of starting your own business. There may be something, like I said, that you've been wanting to go back to school for years, but just didn't feel like you had the time. Well, Sugar, now you got the time, and so building that strategy for your next sometimes means that you have to invite people into where you are right now. It doesn't matter that you don't want nobody to know your business. It doesn't matter that, your pride, don't let your pride get in the way of you stepping into your purpose. Okay. So if you find yourself in that space, come and talk to me. Book a free, 30-minute strategy session. I'm giving that away right now for a limited time where you can actually start to build and talk about and focus on your next and get your focus off of the now.
I'm going to run to Dr. Tierini first because, Dr. T, I don't know how people do it. What is your perspective about people finding their access point to deal with all these things that come into their lives?
Well, I think the first thing that we have to really take stock of is ask ourselves the question, is it ours to manage? Sometimes we are trying to manage things that's not ours to manage. And so we have to blame ourselves as to why we feeling all stressed out and overwhelmed because that need don't have your name on it. What they saying on their platform about what they believe is not your business. And so sometimes we're paying too much attention and giving too much focus to things that should really just be in our peripheral, things that don't have nothing to do with us. So that could be your access point, right there, just making sure that you're managing what is yours to manage and not the things trying to manage what's not yours to manage.
I think that's an interesting perspective because you don't always have to put your hands on everything. And as you said, everything is not your business. What do joy killers look like? And how do we just kind of excise them, if you will, from our space?
That's a broad one because joy killers can take on any number of shapes, sizes, looks, just depending on the individual, right? Depending on who you are, what kind of, grind your gears, as some people say, or kills your joy may look different. So what may be a joy killer for me may not be a joy killer for you. Here again, just like I always say, we have to do our internal work so that we can look at ourselves to say, not just what kills my joy, but ask the question, why? Why is that a joy killer? Because here again, a lot of us, we're giving way too much power to so many people, places, things, and situations that do not deserve that power. So if that thing is killing your joy, if that person is killing your joy, if that place is killing your joy, instead of just making it about a them, again, this is why I say I don't like boundaries because boundaries have us doing this. We should be looking at us and say, or excuse me, not boundaries, barriers. Get it right, Sugar. Barriers, boundaries, barriers, boundaries, barriers. Okay. But this is why I don't like barriers because it makes us look at them. Why is this killing them? What they did and what they, no, Sugar, why are you giving that power that it could kill your joy? You was having a good day until that thing happened. Why did you let it steal your joy? And then you do the work to get back to you to say, no, this is my joy. You can't have it. The joy that the Lord gave me, the world can't take it away. The word didn't give it to me and the world can't take it away. There is power in that and that understanding. So when we're talking about what steals our joy, we gotta, why did I give my joy away? Did they steal it or did I give it away? And then have that conversation with yourself and then deal with whatever answer you give. Don't just, oh, well, what did, and then move on. No. Let's answer that question, Sugar. And then once you know the answer to that, let's do something about it. When you know better, you do better. So that then you won't be walking around saying, oh, they stole my joy. No, I gave my joy away. And here is how I'm not going to do it again. That's the conversation we should be having.
That is a conversation. I want to invite Dr. Tierney in because as I was reading her book, Level Up, Living on Levels That God Intended, oftentimes faith plays a very big part on how you view the things that are happening in your life. Dr. T, jump on in here for a second, because how do you live on levels that God intended? Because hearing both of you talk and understanding your stories, people get paralyzed when they try to make strategic moves because there's so much going on in their head. They don't know how to quiet the noise. Help us in that regard, understanding how to get to a space of leveling up and quieting the noise.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. It really comes back to exactly what you just said. How do we live on levels that God intended is to quiet the noise and tune our frequency to really hear from God. Okay, let's be clear. If we're talking about peace and protecting our peace, peace is a person. Peace is God. That's Jesus. He's the Prince of Peace. So we can't protect something that we're not connected to. We have to make sure that we are connected to Him. We have to make sure that we're leaning into God. And oftentimes what we do is we lean into our fear. We lean into what we see on social media. We lean into what we think. We lean on our own understanding, and any of us that's been walking with God for any amount of time, we know that most of the time when He says stuff, we don't understand it. He gonna say something it's like, what, God, what you just say? You sure? I ain't hear that. Let me wait, what? And so if we are more committed to our understanding, if we're more committed to our thoughts, our ideas, our dreams, our goals, and we're not listening to Him, that's how we miss the levels that He intended for us to be on. You can look at any Bible story and God does not take us from point A to point B. We're going to go point A, point 1, point 17, point valley, point over here, point over there. And then by the time the whale spits us out, we're right where we were supposed to be in the first place. So to have peace in that process, to have peace when it doesn't make sense, you have to be willing to tune your frequency to God and know that He's going to get you to the level that He designed for you, the level that you are equipped to handle. The level that you have the characteristics, the gifts, the talents to be on. But when we're looking at the levels that other people are on, going, "Ooh, I want that. Ooh, I want to do that like that," and we missing it, sugars. And so that's really the main thing is we have to get quiet enough. We have to tune our frequency. We have to lean into the Prince of Peace in order for us to really hear clearly our instructions, our direction, and what it is that we're supposed to be, and understand that we're gonna end up there every time as long as we stay in that posture, in that position.
Dr. Tierney, what do you have to say about that? How do you date yourself? And what are some ways that people can actually begin to date themselves to get to know themselves better?
Yeah. I guess the first thing to know is that this is introspective work. So if we're talking about dating ourselves from the standpoint of protecting our peace, there was actually, let me say this, there was actually a post that was making its rounds on social media here recently, where there was a therapist saying that if you have to protect your peace, then you really don't have peace. You don't have it. And to a degree, I agree with what this therapist was saying. And basically is that if we are outsourcing our peace to strategies or people having to behave a certain way or things having to go well in order for us to have peace, then that's not really peace. That's fake peace. The peace is supposed to come from within us. But I want to give a caveat, to that, in the sense that we do still have to protect our peace, that peace that we have. First, from a spiritual standpoint, that's why the Bible tells us that the enemy is like a roaring lion. He just walks around seeking who he can steal, kill, and destroy. It wouldn't tell us that if there wasn't something that we needed to ward against. Think about it like a house. Yes, you own that house, but you still have to lock that door, and so you can have something, you can own it, but you still have to make sure that you protect it. Okay. Now, if everything about your peace is only from that protection point, then it's not really peace because it's not coming from within you. However, there are measures that we still have to take in order to protect that. I say all of that because sometimes we will hear snippets of something or a piece of something that someone may say on social media that we haven't really digested that thing to see how it works for us, how it works within us. So when we spend that time with ourselves, When we spend that time looking at our own lives, how our own lives are set up, what works for us, what does not work for us, then we won't have the understanding or the wisdom or the knowledge to know what measures we need to put in place or what measures don't work for us. So taking that time to really date yourself, I'm wanting to make sure that people understand this isn't about like going to a fancy restaurant or just like date in that sense. It's about spending time with you so that when you see something on social media, when, something happens unexpected, you won't automatically just give away your peace. You'll know what locks to put on your doors so that you'll understand, no, as for me and my house, this is what we do. This is what I need to do. This is how I make sure that I'm managing my peace. And the only way that we know that is if we're taking that time to sit with ourselves long enough, to actually have conversations with ourselves, to get with our coach or our therapist, to have a deeper understanding of ourselves, to get in front of the person who I said is peace, get in front of Jesus, get in your quiet place, to let him actually depart something within you. All of that is dating yourself, and to make sure that we understand that, yes, that peace that is internally generated is something that we have to do the work for ourselves, but making sure that you still got that lock on that door to protect what it is that God has given you.